Hello and welcome. I'm Kira Scrivener. It is 100,000 degrees. We've had heat waves the entire week, but I have decided that I'm coming back to BookTube. I haven't filmed in a little while, and what better way to do it than in a heat wave? And I'm going to talk about all the books that I bought in 2026. I think these are the books that are sitting beside my bed that I haven't picked up yet and shelved. So I think that these are most of the books that I picked up this year. I might miss a few. This is a dangerous amount of books because I bought 11 books today, and I did tell myself I was going to stop buying books because I'm getting married in 3 months and all of these books need to go into an apartment that I'm going to share with my husband. And do we need to have 800 books plus the books that he owns? No. Am I not sure where these books are going to go? No. Do I keep on buying books nonetheless? Yes. So here I am, and I'm like, one day I'm going to read these to my future children, my unborn children that are not yet conceived, no less born and old enough to read classic literature that I must collect now from thrift stores. Today, I was almost tempted to buy a third version of Narnia because I was like, who knows? I might have 3 children and they may need each a copy, and these copies are so pretty. I have unbelievable intentions toward the books that I'm planning on reading. Anyways, these are mostly classics, some other fun things. Some of these books I've never heard about, and I'm like, yeah, I want that classic. Some of them are well-tread books. But yes, let me go through the books that I found at thrift stores this year, and we'll talk about them. First of all, we have these beautiful collections of several Pelican classic Shakespeare. And we did have some self-restraint here. I could have bought more, but these are 3 that I did not own. We have The Merry Wives of Windsor. We have A Midsummer's Night Dream, which actually I do own. I think I just own in the ugly yellow kind of. Are those also Pelican or are those Oxford? Anyways, I liked this version. And then Anthony and Cleopatra, which I did not own, I don't believe. So yes, I have those 3. I don't think I need to explain them. I have this book that is actually ridiculous that I own, considering that I messed up the authors. It is called The Courtship of Miles Standish by Henry W. Longfellow. I got this mixed up with, I'm forgetting his name again, the guy who wrote Ichabod Crane, i.e. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and his hilarious courtship, which I find ever since I was a small child, well, like 13, apparently 13 is now a small child. Anyways, and I read that and I was transfixed by the courting and Abraham and like all of the things. And when I used to nanny as a little child, again, I'm 15. I don't know why I keep on saying that, but I was like 15. I would just tell these children the story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman and his courtship over and over again. And I think the parents were like, why is this high school student doing that? Another time from looking after children when I was young, I would just read, like I was studying Romeo and Juliet, and I just would read the prologue over and over again. And at one point, a 4-year-old, I thought she was asleep, and I was just like waiting, in case she didn't fully fall asleep. And I was just like reading this quietly, and the 4-year-old voice comes up and goes, "Are you praying?" And I just go, "No, I'm just reading Romeo and Juliet." Anyways, those are stories from my times of looking after children as a young woman. Another book that I picked up in my travels was Esther Waters by George Moore. I believe that this is Irish. I believe I've heard Katie from Books and Things talk about this. I found it for great. I buy all of these books at thrift stores. I think this was the one where I bought for like $1.50. It was great. I think it's Victorian. I will put it on my October TBR at one point. And the same day I also bought The Quest of the Silver Fleece, and it is by W.E. Du Bois. I've read The Souls of Black People, which I didn't love. This is fiction though. I just found his writing style not the most conducive. And it is very interesting because even though he is talking about Black rights and stuff like that, he is very much into like the exceptional Black people need to go the way and the rest of people just need to be laborers. There's some takes there. But I have been on a goal for, 4 years now to read a book that takes place in every single year of the 20th century. And I think the book was published in 1901, so I was familiar with it and I wanted to read another Du Bois book. And yeah, so I think that this is a book that it's on my lawn classics. Am I going to pick it up soon? Probably not, but I don't actually know that much about it other than, it was 1911. I guess that was a time that I had not read at the time. Actually, we can do the thing where we read a first sentence of this. That would be fun. Okay, the first chapter is called Dreams. Night fell. The red waters of the swamp grew sinister and sullen. The tall pines lost their slimness and stood in wide bird blotches all across the way, and the great shadowy bird arose, wheeled and melted, murmuring into the black-green sky. The boy warily dropped his heavy bundle and stood still, listening as the voice of crickets split the shadows and made the silence audible. A tear wandered down his brown cheek. It's actually inducing me to read this soon. So yes, I own too many books, but I do want to read that. And then another classic that I picked up is Chekhov's Essential Plays. This is The Seagull, Uncle Vanya, Three Sisters, and A Cherry Orchard. I have been wanting to read Chekhov for a long time. I have not. So I'm glad to own his plays and such a beautiful classic. So many books that I'm going to haul today are plays, and I just do really love plays and the analysis of them. And yeah, I think I just need a time where I just read a ton of plays because I have so many plays and I love them so much, but I don't read them enough. This book I can actually hold up with pride because I have already read it. It is The Perils of Moving House, and this is by Colin Whittock. He is a British man comic, and this is a fun comic. I found this in a thrift store. I read it. I found it very delightful. It's vignettes. It's various stories. It's like, you know, we are growing too small or growing too big or we're downsizing. It's hilarious. It's tongue-in-cheek. It's quite fun. I would read definitely more of his books because he has things based on various genres and life events and stuff like that, and I had a lot of fun with this. I don't know if I'll hold on with this or I'll pass it on to someone the next time they move, but yes, it was quite delightful to read. The next book is a book by Virginia Woolf. It is called Between Acts, and when I originally picked it up, I thought it was either nonfiction or a collection of stories, but it actually is her last novel, and I did not know that she had a novel called this, but Virginia Woolf was quite she wrote a lot of books, and I have read To the Lighthouse, which I had mixed feelings about. I tried to read Mrs. Dalloway earlier this year, did not get much into it, and I read some of her, Kew Gardens as a short story I love, as well as Afterward, or is that by Edith Wharton? Anyways, I read a ghost story by her. I like her short stories better than her novels so far, and then A Room of Her Own, exceptional. So I've read quite a bit of her writing if you don't include her novels. But let us begin with the first sentence here. It was a summer's night, and they were talking in the big room with the windows open to the garden about the cesspool. The country council had promised to bring water to the village, but they hadn't. Again, intriguing. I love the beginning novels, and also I think this painting really inspired me to pick it up too because it is so beautiful. This book is School Days by Patrick Dempsey. I'm gonna butcher his name. This is translated by Linda Coverdale, and this is another classic that I have not heard about, but I picked up in a thrift store and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So let me remember what intrigued me. Yes, it is a Martinique book. That is why it's translated from French, and it is published in 1992. So it is a kind of modern classic set in the Caribbean. We do not have a lot of books from Martinique. So when I saw it and I looked at it, it looked pretty good. And I was like, okay, yeah, I will read that. So I think it is a little bit autobiographical in his storytelling, and it has all of these like vignettes as well. It also has good printing. We love some good text. So yes, begins with Londings, and this is called Londing 11. My brothers and sisters, oh, I have something to tell you. The little black boy made the mistake of begging for school. I must add in his defense that his suckling days were long gone, and by exploring the endless possibilities of his home, he had run them dry. That's actually also great. Wow, I want to read all these books. The next book I don't know that much about. It is called Heavenly Participation, The Weaving of Sacramental Tapestry. So this is a book that I won at church, to be honest. I won a book giveaway, and it is surveying the barriers of contemporary thinking has erected between the natural and the supernatural. I think it's kind of looking at ancient history and sacramentology, and it's very interesting because in the last couple of years, my church has gone from Pentecostal to Anglican. So we went from being pretty low church or like low tradition to more sacramental, and that is something that I did not grow up with. So it's been very interesting to kind of learn about sacramentology, and I think that this is looking at that. Also, fun artwork around here as well. This is another book that I picked up at a thrift store without knowing anything about it, but it was in the nonfiction section. It's called Women's Rights Emerges Within the Anti-Slavery Movement, 1830 to 1870, A Brief History with Documents. So this really intrigues me. I have not actually spent as much time going through it as I imagined, but this is an era that I'm interested in. I'm kind of terrified about writing historical fiction, but it is what my first love was. I wrote a lot of historical fiction when I was young, and I am very interested. There was a book a couple years ago called The Underground Railroad Next Stop Toronto, and it looks a lot at the Black history of Canada during the Underground Railroad and how, like, at one point, especially where I live in southern Ontario, a huge amount of the population was Black. And then after the Civil War, when the Union won, a lot of Black people left Canada and moved back to the States. So I think it's just such an interesting time period. I think it was 20% of the population was Black, especially in Toronto and in like these various areas, and you had whole Black communities, and it had like a lot of early doctors and lawyers of Black descent were from Canada and then moved to the United States. So it's just like a very interesting time period that I did not know a ton of history about. And this is documents, and this has a picture of what I'm guessing is Sojourner Truth, and said, "Am I not a woman and a sister?" Or it's just an illustration of that with that quote because it's so popular. So yeah, this is definitely like a textual guide. This is not a narrative book or like even a history book in like a narrative way, but I think it is really cool and will be a good resource for writing, and I'm just also interested in history. So when I found this, I was like, yes, I will definitely be picking this up. Continuing with my fun history that, I don't know, I just love cool history books, nonfiction books. So this is called Picasso, Master of the New Idea. I found this on Thursday. It's just like literally just writing intertwined with his art. I hope that some of these are not inappropriate and will get me barred from the YouTubes. But yes, actually all of the ones I'm opening are kind of roughly nude. But yes, this one is obviously one of his most famous. We have his early life where his sketches are more of what we would consider like traditional art, and then we have at his end where things are getting more, yeah, oh actually that's all of that, that's fine. Yeah, and then I think at the end we have all of these, just the documents as well. So it's like a very well researched book, and I must admit that his style is not one of my favorites, but I do love art books. I'm looking at my Frida Kahlo book as well, who's one of my favorite artists. I love looking at art, and it was $3 and I was like, I will be picking this book up. This one I'm so excited for. I picked it up at the same time as my earlier plays, and it is Thornton Wilder's 3 plays, which includes Our Town, The Skin of Our Teeth, and Matchmaker. And I have been reading, I'm completely forgetting the title of the Anne Pratchett book that I'm reading because I'm thinking of it as Our Town consistently, but it is beautiful. I started in January, I loved it. I read so much of it. The writing is amazing, but I kept on wanting to read Our Town, and this book is still copyrighted, so I could not find it online. There's no plays of it, and my library did not have it. So when I found this in a thrift store, I was so excited, and I think it was about a month ago, I got a concussion there too, so I had to stop reading, but I was reading just the preface, which is by him, and like you can tell, I wrote a lot of notes. He just talks about art in such an interesting and cool way. I started the play, it's kind of meta. He starts with like the stage director talking about it. Yeah, highlighting artifice. It's just like, it's really good. And then I heard a concussion and I stopped reading it. So I need to get back to the book and then finish the Anne Pratchett book, because honestly, I started it on January 1st and I was like, oh, this might be one of my favorite books of the year. And then I wanted to finish this, and then anyways, we get distracted, but this book is really good if you want to read plays. And then I'm really excited to read The Skin of Our Teeth and The Matchmaker as well. Another book that is being loaned on my TBR is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. So these relook at several fairy tales, which is actually perfect because I've been reading a lot of fairy tales lately. So even though I bought this a couple months ago, I think that it's probably pretty accurate to where my mood is currently. So let us start with the first line. I remember how that night I lay awake in the wagon, lit in the tender, delicious ecstasy of excitement, my burning cheeks pressed against the impeccable linen of the pillows, and the pounding of my heart mimicking that of the great pistons ceaselessly thrusting the train that bore me through the night, away from Paris, away from girlhood, away from that white enclosed quietude of my mother's apartment in the unguessable country of marriage. Wow. That, I'd heard of the writing of Angela Carter, and that's great. It is quite wordy, but like, the imagery of that is away from girlhood, away from the white enclosed quietude of my mother's apartment, into the unguessable country of marriage. And the pistons and everything's integrated so well. I think that this is the story of Bluebird, which I just read the pro version of that in the month of June. So, wow. Oh, so many books I need to read. And then the last book that I want to talk about before I get to the books of today is Exit West. And this is a book that first got me into literary fiction. I read it in 2017 or 2018, somewhere in there, and I loved it. this looks at the immigration and refugee crisis through a magical realism way, but so rooted in realism, and about these people that are in love and the various people that are trying to get free throughout worlds, and also how that affects relationships, family and romantic. And so much of this book lives rent-free in my brain. Like, I love it, I adore it, it is fantastic. So yeah, I think when I reread it, like, it could never live up to the hype in my mind, but I think it is just such a solidly well-written book, and I have enjoyed the other books I've read by him as well. And he's kind of a mashed potato author, where every time I think about reading one of his books, I like take it out from the library and I'm like, how can I read another one of his books? Maybe it won't lead up to all of these things. But yes, I can definitely recommend this book. And now we're back at my nonfiction books, which is Sisters in the Wilderness, The Lives of Susanna Moody and Catherine Parr Traill. And I love the Catherine Parr because I think she was named after the 6th Queen of Henry VIII, which is my favorite queen. And yes, so when I saw this, I was like, let me know. So in my search of reading 100 books in the 20th century, these women have come up because they are some of the early Canadian writers, and mostly in the 1800s. So I think Catherine Parr Traill was the first woman to publish in Canada. And yeah, they were gentlewomen who were brought over to live in the wild of Canada, etc., etc. There's problematicness, but these are biographies of them. So as I talked about how I am writing in that period of time, this is a very good resource, and I love that I found it for $2. It was delightful. So yes, I am excited to read this book eventually and learn about these women. And I think they were sisters, they just married different people and thus had different last names. Now I'm going to talk about 3 Canadian books that I am probably going to all mispronounce, but the first one is Les Belles Sœurs by Michael Tremblay. This is a Quebecois play, and it is published in the 1960s, I believe. I saw this at Stratford a few years ago. It was impeccable. It is humorous, beautiful, lovely. It is written in the slang of Quebec, and that was revolutionary at the time. And I grew up in Ottawa, which is on the border of Ontario and Quebec, and there's a lot of anti-Quebec sentiment, especially in the family I grew up in and some of the sides. I always grew up with French around me and knew many Quebecois. French was always a part of my life, but so was anti-French sentiment. And that is something that I'd be very intrigued about reading more about, and like challenging my own assumptions and the way that colonization and various other things has happened to French Canadians as well. But this book was written in the French that people speak in Quebec, which I think is important considering there's so much laughter and jest at the expense of language differing from France, which we do that in all languages because languages are not consistent, and people of Quebec have been living there for 500 years speaking the same language in root, but not the same language in the way that it's expressed, and that has made sense. So yes, this is a play that is very funny, very good. I would highly recommend it. It is all about women and also about the changing of life and poverty and class and women's place in the world and all of those things. It is really great, and I am so happy to finally own a copy of it. Okay. At the same time, I also found another French Canadian novel, and this is Les Guerres, yes sir. So this is translated, but it does still contain some French in it as well. It was published in the 1960s as well, 1964, and it is a short Canadian novel originally written in French, translated. So again, I want to read more French literature from Canada, that is from Quebec, and yeah, let me begin with it. Joseph wasn't painting. He approached like a man wanting to work. Which hand would he put to the log, his right hand or his left? His right hand was stronger, better for working. His left hand was strong too. Joseph spread his 5 fingers of his left hand on the log. He heard breathing behind him. He turned around. It was his own. His other fingers, his other hand, seized the axe. It crashed down between his wrist and hand, which leapt into the snow and was slowly drowned in his own blood. I have no idea why he's cutting his hand off, and I guess that's why there is a hand here. But yes, I am excited to read this again. It is probably a long-term classic, but I am excited to have more French Canadian novels on my shelf. At the thrift store, there was 2 Thompson Highway books, and I only got 1, but I'm hoping to read this and then pick up the other one as well. I just already had 11 books, but this is called Dry My Lips Autumn Move on Kapasang. So I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. This is set on an indigenous reserve, and it is about these young men who play hockey, and it is apparently has a lot of sorrow and tragedy and joy. And the last few years I've been very into hockey, and I love indigenous authors and I love plays, so I'm just very excited to read one that incorporates all three. And I think it was, written in the 70s, I think. The first line I cannot read because it is an expletive, but Big Jolie begins with calling out for Giselle, who of course is not home. And then he says, "Hey, blank," which is an insult for a woman. So let's hope. Obviously we want to show the problematicness as well as the good things of characters, but yeah, I hope I like this, considering I don't love the degradation of women very much, but I do think that authentic point of views and way people are talking is also important. So the next two books go together, and these are Les Mots d'Arthur, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and this is by Sir Thomas Malory. So I actually have Arthurian romances on my shelf, but they are a big textbook with many of these things, and I don't think they include all of these. And these are quite nice, and the font is quite good. I love a nice paperback. This is the Penguin English Library versions of this. And yeah, these were the books that I was like, my future children will need to read the Arthurian legends. Will they? I don't know. But I do have them now. It befell in the days of Uther Pendragon, when he was king of all England, and so reigned, that there was a mighty duke in Cornwall, that held a war against him long time. I feel like there should be a long time there. And the duke was called the Duke of Tynedel. And so by means King Uther sent for this duke, charging him to bring his wife with him, for she was called a fair lady and a passing wise, and her name was Igraine. So, not the most compelling, I must say, but we have Uther Pendragon, the legend coming through. We're getting there, folks. So this is a separate piece. This is a 1959 classic. I think it's set in a boarding school recollection, one of those types of books. And I read the first line already to myself, and I know that it is a beauty. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for a long time, and it begins with, "I went back to Devon School not long ago, and found it looking oddly newer than when I was there a student 15 years ago. It seemed more sedate than I remembered, more perpendicular and straight-laced, with narrower windows and shinier woodwork, as though a coat of varnish had been put on everything for better preservation. But of course 15 years before, there had been a war going on. Perhaps the school wasn't as well kept in those days. Perhaps varnish, along with everything else, had gone to war." That's a great start. This is another book that I just want to continue reading, and I think it's only, 180 pages. So sometime I will read this. And then another play. I feel like I needed to look up how to actually pronounce this, because I think in my brain I should say Antigone, which I think it's like Antigone or something very particular, but I don't actually know how they say it. But this is not the original Greek play. This is an adaptation of it that was originally published in the 1940s, and it takes reflection on Hitler, who at that time controlled France. So yes, let us begin the beginning. So I think I want to read the original Greek play, and then I want to read this one. So it begins with the chorus saying, "Well, here we are. These people are about to act out for you the story of Antigone. That thin little creature sitting by herself, staring straight ahead, seeing nothing, is Antigone. She is thinking that the instant I've finished telling you who's who and what's what in this play, she will burst forth as the tense, sallow, willful girl whose family would never take her seriously, and who is about to rise up alone against Creole and her uncle, the king. Another thing she is thinking about is she is going to die. Antigone is young. She would much rather live than die, but there is no hope for it. When your name is Antigone, there is only one part you can play, and she will have to play that to the end." Wow. I really want to read this book. My goodness. This is just making me want to read all the books. Also, so this is by Methuen Modern Plays, and I love that it has 1930s and all of these things, and then the 1940s is in a black outline. I very much like that, very much. And probably my most wildest book, I definitely did not need to pick up this book, but I saw it, and I'm a sucker for anthologies or massive histories, and this is The Cambridge History of German Literature. give me a book that can also operate as a textbook and I'm in love. So this is actually not an anthology, but it does go through the history of German literature. Do I need to know about German literature? Am I writing a novel about German literature? No. But yet, 17th century fiction. Kant, Mendelssohn, and the lens of gender and class. These are the things I want to read about, you know? Periodicals and literary criticism. Weimar classicism. Jena romanticism. Aesthetic humanism. These are the things I want to read about. So, I'm very excited about this. And then last, but certainly not least, we have these two darlings, which I guess I really should have taken the cover off this one as well, but I will hold them up because they are the same except for the 41 and 42. So my book club is reading Persuasion next, and I was so excited because I was like, yes, we have Persuasion. And maybe this is either a journal with like Persuasion quotes, or it is a Persuasion with marginalia and then also places for like note-taking, which I love when they do that. But they were covered in these plastic wraps, so I could not take them off in the thrift store. And then I opened it, and it's actually a literary journal. So when they said literary journal, they meant literary journal as in essays and stuff, but essays about Jane Austen, please and thank you. So I was very excited. This is put through by the Jane Austen Society of North America. I am a huge Jane Austen fan. She's one of my favorite authors. I read all of her novels several times, a lot of her juvenilia, and so much writing about Jane Austen and videos about Jane Austen. So I'm very excited to have copies of this journal. So yes, that is all of my books. I'm so excited to read a number of them, and I actually feel kind of intimidated by all the books I want to read and all the books that I need to fit on my shelf. Let me know which book you think I should start with, what book I should definitely finish soon, other than Our Town, which I definitely need to read the first. But yes, I would love to hear what book you're most excited to read soon. And yeah, I think these are pretty much exclusively classics too, which I think I'm just further and further going into just weird, sometimes obscure classics that I definitely want to read and that maybe no one else cares about. I think that's just like my whole niche now. So yes, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will hopefully be back very soon to see you. So happy reading and writing, and I will talk to you next time.